and justice for all. So we have now arrived to Metallica's fourth album and their last, thrash album officially. Um, unless you count Death Magnetic, but this is their last, really, classic thrash album, if you know what I mean. And of course, it's the first since the death of Cliff Burton, and it's the first to hire Jason Newsted right there next to Jamesy Boy right there. And of course, this change in the lineup would represent a change in attitude for this band, a change in style. They kept the thrash, but they changed the sound, and they changed the production. They've, of course, kept Fleming Rasmussen for this release, but the sound itself would be a lot more stripped down, and the sound itself would be a lot more bare bones and thin, so to speak. You hear that in the drums, you hear that in the guitars. It's very apparent. This is a direct contrast from the thicker, more meat on your bones approach of Master of Puppets, and now it's basically stripping all that meat away and just giving us a bare bones production. Very clicky, very thin, very distorted sound when compared to Master of Puppets. But in a way, I think the very thin, bare bones production of this album is really appropriate for the atmosphere, and it gives it this really visceral and aggressive edge that you sort of noticed, but you didn't really notice as much on the previous album. This is probably in reaction to the death of Cliff Burton that everything just sounds a lot more aggressive on this release. Everything's dialed up a notch when it comes to the delivery of the music, when it comes to how it's executed. I mean, just look at this album cover right here. Look how much of a disheveled mess this is. You got moldy walls, you got the scales of justice being outweighed by the money that's dripping down. You have Lady Liberty being, there's scratch marks on her torso, and she's being pulled down by ropes. It's obviously a very disheveled mess. And you even have Injustice for All spray painted in graffiti or something like that. So what you see on this album cover, just how much of a mess it is, gives you an idea of the sound that you're gonna hear on this album. Just intuitively speaking, you can already get a sense of what this album's going to sound like on a production level. And you know what, I'm just going to get this out of the way because I know everyone's mentioned it, everybody makes a really big deal out of it. You can barely hear the bass on this album, it's very low in the mix. I believe that was part of Jason Newsted's hazing and so forth, and I guess because they were still grieving over the loss of Cliff Burton, they didn't want Jason Newsted, the new guy, to outshine him, or outshine Cliff Burton. So yeah, I guess that's one rumor saying that's why that happened. I've heard stories the other band members deny this, but I don't know. I definitely believe the other story a bit more than what they're denying. And you know what? James Hetfield's guitar riffs actually sound very strong despite the tinny distortion that coats them. If you could actually hear Jason Newsted's bass a lot more clearly in the mix, just think of how much more crushing this album would sound. I mean, this album is already aggressive. Just think about how even heavier, how even more skull pummeling it would be if you actually got to hear Jason Newsted's mighty bass, which you barely ever do, unfortunately. I'm not blaming Jason, it's obviously not his fault. It's either the other band members or it's a myriad of reasons, but yeah. Now on to the musicians' performances. James Hetfield actually sounds very visceral and raw, even more so than before, because this is probably as a reaction to his grief over Cliff Burton's demise, so he definitely lays off of the reverb that he used off of Ride the Lightning and stuff like that, and is much more in your face, he's about ready to grab your throat and put you out of your misery, which is a very cool trait. He's able to deliver unadulterated aggression and anger in a musical and melodic fashion. Unfortunately, I can't really comment on how Jason Newsted sounds because, again, his bass is very much drowned out in the mix. You can barely hear it, you can barely make it out. It's more of like a really tinny, like, thumping noise that you hear kind of in the background, but it's barely even there, if at all. I know Jason Newsted is a great bassist. I'm very much aware of his work in Flotsam and Jetsam, but of course it's not fair. I really want to say some good things about Jason Newsted on this album because I know he definitely. I think he wrote Blackened or something, but correct me if I'm wrong. I have the thing right here. Let me look. Yeah, okay, yeah, I was right. Yeah, he helped write Blackened, which is really cool, and I would really like to hear more of his contributions if the band members had let him. Lars Ulrich and Kirk Hammett definitely deliver the goods as always. And they definitely step up their game big time here. Kirk Hammett's definitely playing more complex tapping solos and stuff like that, especially in songs like One and The Shortest Straw and all that. Lars Ulrich definitely has some of his all-time best drumming performances, like on Dyer's Eve and so forth. Yeah, this is definitely. I think this is probably the pinnacle of like their musical technical proficiency, so to speak. Which, yeah, really like that. The songwriting definitely takes like a longer, more complex, like studio progressive sort of sound because come on, we're not talking about Meshuggah here or anything like that. We're not talking about crazy polyrhythms or anything like that, but it's definitely like more complex than what we've heard off of Master of Puppets. They're definitely going into some more complex rhythms. But again, this isn't Meshuggah or anything. It's just more complex than what they've done before. And going back to the fact that these songs are longer, yeah, they really are. Most of these songs, or all of these songs, range from 5 minutes 13 seconds to about 9 minutes 50 seconds. Which, of course, I've heard longer songs that were like a half hour long, but for the casual metal fan who hasn't heard of like progressive rock or anything beforehand, this will definitely be like pretty fucking long, of course. The thing I like about this is that because the band are playing longer songs, they naturally allow these songs to grow and develop as they go, while still being able to thrash our necks off with songs like Harvester of Sorrow, The Shortest Straw, stuff like that. As a result of this approach, again, many thrash classics exist on this one. Like I said, Harvester of Sorrow, Shortest Straw, the title track, One. And of course, Cliff Burton's final writing credit. It's a posthumous writing credit in the song To Live Is to Die, which is my favorite instrumental by the band, just to let you know. Of course, many people have debated over the years whether or not this is a true instrumental or anything like that because of the poem near the end. But when really, it's just like a short little 4-line stanza, albeit a beautiful one, but it's not like it takes up the entire course of the song. Of its place like near the end because the focus is of course like on the music that surrounds it. We're not talking about like Death Doom bands who have like whispered vocals in their choruses like Saturnus or Daylight Dies. I know they have one song called In the Silence where they have some whispered vocal lines in the verses and stuff like that. So it's not like a main focus in the song. It's like placed near the end, so you focus on the music itself. That's the main focus. The music surrounding this beautiful poem just allows you to drift into the consciousness of the band members' psyches and seeing how they're reacting to the loss of Cliff Burton with this wonderful tribute and just seeing the hardship that these band members have gone through at this moment in time. And the cut-off ending that you hear to Dyer's Eve couldn't be more appropriate enough. It's you can interpret it as if Cliff Burton's life was tragically cut short, which of course it was. It could also be interpreted as this era of the band being just simultaneously cut off because they're about to enter a new age, of course, which I'll get to in the next video. The way you just hear everything go, and then suddenly it's all like the album's immediately finished. It could be like the sudden ending of one's life. Obviously, that's probably in reaction to Cliff Burton, or considering this is the end of the '80s. This is 1988, and they were just about to drastically change their sound after this album. It could be interpreted as that, even though I don't think that was really what was going through their minds at the time of this album's release. But who knows? It's just interesting to interpret these things. All in all, this is my second favorite album by the band, possibly third, only behind Ride the Lightning, possibly the Black Album. I don't know, I need to listen to the Black Album again, see what I really think. But I have a good, strong feeling that this is number 2, only behind Ride the Lightning, because this is a brilliant release. It has a very aggressive, visceral atmosphere, which was stepped up from the other albums, of course, probably as a reaction to Cliff Burton's death. It's still very aggressive and in your face, while also providing that right mix of ambition and accessibility to make this one a really memorable release, one that flies by really quickly, one that you enjoy listening to all the way through. It's just one to really sit down and contemplate over, or one to really thrash your neck off to. You can do both even at the same time. It's just that good in my book. Even though the production's a bit faulty, that's really more of just a nitpick for me, because I've heard worse production from this band, like after this album, like in an era when they were able to get good production, they decide to have shitty production instead. But we're not there yet. We're still on Injustice for All. But yeah, despite that, this is one hell of a keeper. This is a truly monumental album. And before I quit this video and before we transition into the 90s albums, if you guys were wondering my ranking of the first 4 like thrash albums, it would be number 1, Ride the Lightning, number 2, Injustice for All, number 3, Master of Puppets, and number 4, Kill 'Em All. So there you go. I just in case you guys wanted to know, there you have it right there. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next decade, the 1990s, with the Black Album. I mean, I have an Opeth shirt on, but it's black, whatever. Black Album.